I am Jason. I'm 47 years old, unvaccinated, and the COVID-19 Delta variant almost killed me. On October 16th of last year, I came home from work and I was just completely exhausted. I ended up going to bed about 3 hours earlier than normal. I was supposed to go to work the following day. I woke up and just felt like I got hit by a truck. I had no energy. I didn't even feel like I could walk out to my vehicle, let alone work. So I ended up not working that day. I started coughing really hard. I was coughing up a lot of mucus and just no energy at all. So the next day, I decided to go get a COVID test. So I went through a drive-through COVID testing station. And the next day, I got a text back that I was positive for COVID. So from the way I was feeling, I was expecting to get a positive test back. So I went home and figured I was going to do the normal be sick for 3 days and then feel like a brand new man, which was the people that I knew that were getting COVID. It was how it was going for everybody. They were tired and had breathing issues and coughing for a few days, and then they woke up like the 4th or 5th day and they felt great. So that was my plan. I was gonna get a lot of sleep a lot and for a few days and then wait for a negative COVID test so I could go back to work. But that never happened. So the second day after my positive COVID test, I just continued to get worse. It was harder to breathe. I wake up in the morning coughing my lungs out. I got in the shower and I coughed so hard that I almost felt like I was going to pass out. Not a very pleasant experience. And throughout the day, I would kind of nod off and on. I didn't even have the desire to watch TV. So basically all I did was sit on my couch, ice pack on my head. I had a fever. At that point I was still eating, but not a whole lot. And I was still drinking water throughout the day. And every once in a while I'd get up, go to my room, lay down on my bed and fall asleep for a couple hours. And then I'd wake up, go back out, sit on the couch and do the same thing all over again. Ice pack on the head and drinking water. So it was the third day, which would have been a Wednesday. My appetite was decreasing. I was having a hard time sleeping. I would keep going from cold, extremely cold to extremely hot, and I'd wake up in my bed and my clothes would be soaked in sweat. It was either that or I had a fan blowing on me on high. I was never at a comfortable temperature when I was sleeping. I was either super cold or really hot. And I was losing my appetite and I was starting to drink less, and I knew that was going to be a problem if I didn't stay hydrated. So at that point, I completely stopped drinking water and was only drinking Gatorade. And it was getting kind of hard to swallow. I didn't want to drink anything, so I was forcing Gatorade. I'd guzzle a half a bottle at a time in an attempt to stay hydrated. So I was drinking probably three large bottles of Gatorade, throughout the day. And the fourth day, I had no appetite at all. I think I was eating peaches and Jello, and that was like twice a day. I'd eat a little bit of Jello and some peaches. I couldn't eat solid food anymore. I had no desire to eat solid food. I really didn't. I was still forcing the Gatorade. It was harder than before, and my head was hurting worse. I was putting ice on my head more than I was, and I couldn't get comfortable even sitting on my couch. Couldn't sleep. During the night, I just tossed and turned. I couldn't breathe. I was constantly trying to get into a position where I felt like I could breathe better, and I just couldn't find that position. And I still was getting hot and cold. At one point, I was so cold I put a portable heater in my bedroom and had it running on like 76 degrees. And I just couldn't get comfortable, so I didn't sleep. I wasn't sleeping at all. Maybe once in a while I'd doze off for maybe a half hour, and then I'd wake up sweating, that or either cold. So I'd have to get up and find some extra blankets and crank the heater up again, and it was just a constant battle with trying to get comfortable, and which resulted in no sleep. So at that point, I was starting to feel I was pretty worried that I wasn't going to get better, but something inside me just told me that tough it out, man. Give it another day or so, and you're going to start feeling better. So that didn't happen. It was just a constantly getting worse every day. Nothing was improving. I was coughing more, getting no sleep. I didn't want to drink anymore. At that point, I couldn't even stomach drinking Gatorade. I was just sipping on water whenever I could. So I knew that I was getting dehydrated, and if something didn't change the next day, I was going to have to start thinking about what I was going to do, because sitting at home and waiting it out wasn't going to work. So I had a family member brought over a oxygenator, which I'd never even really heard of before. And what you do is you put it on your finger, and it gives you your blood, your oxygen level, along with your pulse, your heart rate. So they brought that over and hung it outside my door, and I waited till they left, and I didn't want to be giving anybody what I had. So I put the oxygenator on my finger, and my oxygen level was 77, and normal is 95 to 100. So my oxygen level was extremely low. Probably 2 hours later, I was in an ambulance on my way to the emergency room. And at that point I was so weak. I couldn't hold my head up. My head was like this, I remember, and I couldn't pick it up at all. So I was walking around with my head down like this for probably 2 days before it got to the point of going to the ER. And I was so weak that I couldn't walk. I didn't feel like I could walk to my front door, and I needed to go down a flight of stairs, which I knew wasn't going to happen. So they actually ended up bringing up a chair, and they strapped me in this chair, put me on oxygen right away, and had to carry me down a flight of stairs to the ambulance. So when I got to the ER, they put me in a room and hooked me up to an airvo, which forces oxygen into your lungs. Because I wasn't getting near the oxygen that I needed. So I was there for a couple hours laying in the bed there, and they hooked a bunch of stuff up to me, and 2 hours later they admitted me and took me to the COVID floor and got me settled into my room on the COVID floor. And I think it was that night, I remember there was 2 respiratory doctors that came in, and they were pretty worried about my condition I was in, the condition I was in. And the one informed me that people that were in the condition I was in, usually didn't make it. And the way they were talking to me and the things that they were telling me, I got the idea that they thought that I was probably going to die. So they went through they told me that they might have to intubate me and put me on a ventilator. So they went through they're explaining the process of how that happened, because they thought that could happen at any minute, that I could crash and they would have to put me on a ventilator. So they were kind of telling me what they were going to do when that happened, so I wasn't surprised. I remember a lady walked in and asked me if I wanted a chaplain to come into my room. And at that point, I kind of got hit with the reality that death was, the percentage of me dying was extremely high, and I knew that's how the medical experts felt too. But I wasn't willing to give up. So of course I said no to the chaplain coming into my room. I wasn't ready to quit fighting, and I wasn't ready to accept death. Oh, so they wanted to give me they told me they wanted to give me a medication, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was a common drug that they give. If they can, they give to all the COVID patients right away. And the doctor told me that my liver was in too bad of shape as a result of how bad I had the COVID. So they couldn't give me the drug that I needed. And so there was an alternate drug that they said they could try, and I can't remember what that was called either. But they gave it to me through it was kind of like a mask that somebody with sleep apnea would wear. It covered my nose and my mouth, and it was pumping oxygen into me, and they gave me this medication through that. And that was pretty wild. As soon as I started receiving the medication, I it felt like I could breathe like normal. I mean, it was like before I got sick with COVID. I felt relaxed and I could breathe really good. And it had to have been within minutes or so, I'd say, after I started taking in the medication, I started hallucinating. And I remember I was flying over a field. I was probably about 15 feet over the field, just flying. And I could feel the wind blowing in my face and breathing in the fresh air. And I could hear people talking to me. And then I turned my head to look at them, and there was nobody there. And then I'd look ahead, and I'd see my doctor at the foot of my bed on the computer. And that kept happening, that I would hear all these voices, people talking, and I'd turn to look at them, and there was nobody there. But my doctor was right there in front of me at the edge of my bed, at the foot of my bed on the computer, so I knew I wasn't dreaming. So I was actually hearing things, and I was seeing things that weren't real, and that's the first time that's ever happened to me. So that was kind of a weird experience. And then I ended up just, passing out and falling asleep. So then after I was finished receiving that medication, that mask they had on my face damaged my nose pretty bad. It was bruised up and swollen, and so they couldn't put that mask back on me. So they put the Airvo back in, which was just a tubes in my nose. And when I was hooked up to that Airvo, I had to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. Every time I took a breath, it had to be in through my nose, out through my mouth. If I didn't do it that way, the alarms on my oxygen sensors or machines would start beeping really loud, and my oxygen levels would drop. So that was pretty frustrating. And I remember I think I didn't sleep for 2 days because of that. I couldn't sleep with the Airvo. I don't know if anybody's ever been hooked up to an Airvo and been in the hospital for a few days, but I mean, I couldn't sleep. I was up for 2 days straight. I remember just staring at the walls at night, just wishing I could fall asleep, but I couldn't even doze off of that Airvo in, because it was just they were forcing a lot of oxygen in me. I remember several times people walking in, and they'd say, "Wow, you're using a lot of oxygen," and I mean, they were really pumping the oxygen through me. So yeah, the Airvo was not very pleasant. So at night they ended up giving me a full face mask. It covered it went around my whole face. It was like a big old gas mask. And I had to wear that at night because I couldn't sleep with the Airvo. And I remember the first night I wore that thing, I got a pretty solid night's sleep. And I think that helped a lot with my recovery, getting that good night's sleep after being up for 2 days straight. Because if you can't get any rest or sleep, that really hinders your recovery, I think. So I ended up wearing that mask every night when I would sleep, and during the day I'd have to wear the Airvo. And that was kind of a nuisance too when I ate, because I was constantly having that oxygen pumped into me, and I'm trying to eat, and I was starting to get a sore throat from the forced air. And eventually I just kind of got used to it and was more comfortable with it. I think the second, it was probably the third day, I started eating. And I was actually, once my oxygen levels were back up, I got my appetite back. So I actually wanted to eat. Oh, I was probably eating about half my meals for the first couple days. And then after that, I think I was eating all of my meals. They'd serve me 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, supper. It's actually really good food. That's the only thing I miss about being in the hospital. So after about a week, I had a occupational therapist come in. I was getting better every day. I kept getting a little bit better every day. So they sent in a occupational therapist, and I remember he come in and he wadded up a blanket and threw it on my bed. I was sitting in the chair. He wadded up a blanket, threw it on my bed, and asked me to fold it. So I stood up and trying to fold this blanket was like a workout in the gym before I got sick. It was very difficult. My strength levels were at an all-time low. I couldn't believe how weak I was, and by that point, my muscles were just like jello. They were jello. Right? Not even that. I don't know how to explain it, but my muscles were really soft, and I had no muscle tone. I could actually squeeze my muscles and feel the bones in my body. They were so mushy, and I was so out of breath trying to fold that towel. I was so frustrated, and I just kind of dropped it on the bed. I just did a half-assed job of folding it, and I was like, that's the best I can do. And I remember being so frustrated because I couldn't fold that damn blanket. And just kind of realized at that point how long of a road I had ahead of me as far as recovery. I remember brushing my teeth got me out of breath. I'd get done brushing my teeth and I'd sit down in a chair. It'd take me about 5 minutes to catch my breath just from brushing my teeth. The thing I hated the most was when I had to take a shower. A shower just totally wiped me out. So I waited till, it was probably 2 hours before I'd go to bed before I'd take a shower. Because that was probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to, not ever, but in my COVID recovery, taking a shower was by far the worst thing and the hardest thing I had to do. And I did not look forward to showers because it just took my breath away, and it completely, I used up all my strength and by the time I was done with a shower, I just wiped out. It'd take me about 10 or 15 minutes to recover, catch my breath, and I was just done from there. I was ready for bed after a shower. It was pretty bad. So I ended up being in the hospital. It was after my second week. They took me off the COVID floor and put me in a room where I could actually have people come visit me. They allowed me to have 2 visitors a day. And that was pretty nice. For 2 weeks, I hadn't been able to see anybody. I was there for I think it was 1 week, and that's where I started doing my my therapy, where they'd have me go for walks around the hospital through the hallways and stuff. And then I'd have somebody come in and have me do some exercises with a stretchy band, things to help me physically and with my respiratory before I went home. They wanted me at a certain level before they sent me home. So I ended up getting down to my oxygen was down to about 6 liters a minute. And a couple days after that, they had me down to 3, I think it was 3 liters, just when I was just sitting in my chair. So, but they bumped me up to like 5 or 6 when I went for my walks. And so after 3 weeks, it was 21 days, they told me I could go home. But I had a lot of stuff I had to take with me. These 4 things right here were my best friends for 2 months. Okay, so here's the stuff they sent me home with. It became part of my daily life for a couple months. So this machine right here is an oxygen concentrator, and it makes its own oxygen. This was running 24 hours a day for a couple months, and I always had it on 2 liters a minute. And then if I was up walking around doing anything, I had to bump it up to 4 liters a minute. I went to bed with it. So I was constantly hooked up to this thing for 24 hours a day for about 2 months. And it's got about 40 foot of hose attached to it, so I could kind of walk around and do the things that I needed to do without moving the machine around. Then this deal here was a cart for when I would go on my walks outside. They wanted me to go for 3 6-minute walks a day. And I had this running at 4 liters a minute when I went on my walks. And this little deal right here was a little breathing exercise they wanted me to do every hour. Now, when I first started using this at the hospital, I could only get it up to 500. And what you do is you stick this in your mouth and you suck in as much air as you can, and it raises this green deal up. So 500 was where I started at in the hospital. So right now, about 3 months later, I'm getting it up to 3,500. So that's a pretty big improvement from where I was. And this backpack here is my portable oxygen. So I would take this with me to all my appointments when I left the house. And they come with a little small bottle. So I always had to make sure I had a few extra bottles with me, because these tanks at 2 liters a minute lasted for 2 hours. And if I ran it on 4 liters, they would only last 1 hour. So this was kind of nice because it had the straps on. You just throw it over your back like a backpack. walk around with it. It's pretty convenient. This stuff was my best friend for about 2 months. I almost forgot about this little guy. So this is an oximeter. And what you do is turn the power on, slide your finger inside of it. And when the numbers come up here on the left side is going to be my oxygen level. And on the right side is your heart rate. When my oxygen level fell below 90, that meant it was time for me to take a rest. They wanted my oxygen level always above 90. So I'm finally home and I can start to try to do things for myself again. I had family members helping me out, which helped a lot. I had somebody stayed with me for the first 3 or 4 days that I was home. It was pretty tough. There was things that I couldn't do, and there was things that were really difficult that I remember going to bed, just getting into bed at night was extremely difficult, and it kind of put me into a panic because I would get into bed, lay down, and I'd feel like I just got done running a mile. So I'd have to have somebody crank my oxygen up until I could catch my breath, because they wanted me on 2 liters at rest. So if I was watching TV, sitting on my couch or laying in bed, 2 liters. And then whenever I was on my feet, they wanted my oxygen at 4 liters a minute. So when I would go to bed, I'd have to have it cranked up to 4 liters until I could catch my breath, which took about 5 minutes. It was pretty scary. There's nothing like laying down in your bed and feeling like you can't breathe. But after 5 minutes, I'd catch my breath and then have the oxygen turn back down to 2 liters. And so after about, I'd say 5 days, I decided to go outside for a walk, because they told me when I left they wanted me to do 3 walks a day for 6 minutes. Whether 3 6-minute walks each day, no matter if I had to walk around inside or outside. The oxygen company gave me this little cart that I could roll around outside with an oxygen bottle on it, so I didn't have to carry my backpack, which was pretty handy. So I'd go for my walks outside, and I just have to kind of push that cart around. That was pretty challenging for a few days, and then after that, it just kind of started getting a little bit easier each day. I had to kind of do a lot of my progressing on my own. I was supposed to start pulmonary rehab right away when I got out of the hospital, but of course it took my insurance company a month and a half to approve it. So I was having to I didn't want to, fall further behind than where I was already at. So I was doing a lot of stuff. I made sure I did my 3 6-minute walks every day. I was doing my exercises with the stretchy band. They gave me this pamphlet with all these different exercises to do every day. and I had a little deal that I used for breathing exercises, and I try to do that every hour. You take in 10 really big breaths, and I did that. I try to do that every hour, and that little thing really helped a lot, not being able to do rehab and stuff. So when I did finally get to start rehab, it was December 30th by the time I got to rehab. So I got home on November 13th, and it was December 30th before I got to start my pulmonary rehab. And that was twice a week, and I was there for an hour and a half each day, and probably 1 hour of that was just doing cardio machines to build up my cardio and strengthen my lungs. So I did that for 7 weeks, twice a week for 7 weeks. I did my pulmonary rehab, and I graduated from my pulmonary rehab on February 8th and went back to work on February 14th. And I've been back to work for 7 weeks now, and it's going pretty good. The first three weeks of work was, when I got home, I was absolutely drained. I get home and sit down on the couch and didn't want to move. So I just kind of watched TV for a little bit and go right to bed. Once I got home from work, I had no energy to do anything. No energy, no motivation at all. Drained. So that went on for 3 weeks. Every day I got home from work. And now I'm at a point where I'm back to where I was at as far as work. I've been going to the gym. So when I started, shortly after I started my pulmonary rehab, I also started going to the gym to build up my strength. And I'm still going to the gym. My strength is back to 100%, I feel. As far as my lungs, I think my cardio is, I'm going to say, about 80%. I have no problem doing normal things in life that, the normal person does. But I still get a little winded when I go upstairs. And I notice when I'm at the gym, my cardio is probably about 80% of what it was before I got COVID. I don't know if I'll ever get back to 100%, but that's my goal. So I'm not going to stop trying to get there. I still keep improving, so I feel like eventually I'm going to be at 100%. So I'm not going to stop working towards that. So that's kind of a short story of my experience with the COVID-19 Delta variant. For some people, it can be pretty nasty, and it definitely was for me. So for anybody out there that has to deal with this disease, I'm praying for you and hoping for a speedy recovery.